Well, as you guys are getting comfortable. So hello everybody, I'm Julie Larson, the graduate chair. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's lecture, which is part of the School of Architecture graduate program design research series. Tonight I'm here to welcome to the School of Architecture Matias del Campo. But first, a few acknowledgements. We would like to offer the university's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge with respect to the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people of whose ancestral land Syracuse University now stands. I would also like to thank the School of Architecture for sponsoring tonight's event, particularly Dean Michael Speaks, who is up there. Associate Dean Miller, Kyle Miller, as well as our staff, Lauren Mintier, Deborah Witter-Gamba, Lori Mataloni, and our IT team, which is remarkable, Andy Nelloy, Daryl Olin, and Chris Cavino. So tonight's event is part of the ongoing annual graduate program design research workshop series. And as chair, I established this to create opportunities for the graduate students to gain exposure to guest professionals who are invited to conduct an in-person workshop in Syracuse. One of the guests tonight, Matias del Campo, led last fall with his partner Sandra Manager, one of the workshops to provide a kind of view into new research methodologies in their own office, and how to provide leverage into emerging processes and practices in and around and in the periphery of architecture. And we already have started to see a lot of the kind of influence of the workshops over this past year in the graduate work with the design and construction of the annual independent design student-led pavilion that is behind me in the marble room. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. The students took many cues from a lot of the techniques and things that they learned over this last year in the workshop, so it's really exciting to see that starting to kind of emerge in the design work of their own. So this the theme for this year has been on artificial intelligence and how it really can start to potentially change the way we design in the future, and how to really enrich our conceptual and aesthetic explorations with new software. And as you are hopefully aware tonight, our guest Matias will also be joining us tomorrow night in the Aesthetic Agenda and Future of AI Roundtable discussion, which we'll be holding here tomorrow after studio. So I hope all of you can join for that as well. So you would be hard-pressed to not maybe see or run into Matias, whether that's online or somewhere out in the world. He's been really kind of on the lecture workshop circuit, and I think, honestly, I'm not sure how, but he seems to get in like 6 hours more a day than the rest of us, and I don't know how he does it, but it must be some kind of AI algorithm, I don't know what. He'll maybe get that to us later, but it's proprietary now. Matias is an architect, designer, and educator, currently serving as an associate professor at University of Michigan. He earned a Master of Architecture from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna and a PhD from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. In addition, he holds the position of Director of the Architecture and Artificial Intelligence Lab at Michigan. Alongside Sandra Manager, who will be joining us tomorrow for the AI Roundtable, they co-founded the award-winning architecture practice SPAN, renowned for designs rooted in advanced geometry, computational methodologies, and philosophical inquiries. His own research, conducted in collaboration with the Computer Science Department at Michigan, Michigan Robotics, MIDAS, explores advanced design methodologies in architecture, specifically leveraging artificial intelligence techniques. Matias' significant contributions extend to academic publications, with his recent work that includes Diffusions in Architecture that he is promoting here tonight. So this is a new publication of his that he's going to be speaking about, as well as neuroarchitecture, design, and artificial intelligence. So with that, I'm very honored to have him joining us here tonight. Please welcome Matias del Campo.
Hi everyone. Julie, thank you so much for this highly generous introduction. Not much left to say for me, except a huge thank you for the invitation to speak here today. Thank you very much to Dean Michael Speaks and to Chair Julie Larson for this generous invitation. It's indeed an honor to be here. So this is sort of a premiere. I think it's the second time I'm doing this lecture, so please forgive me if I occasionally forget words or do ahs and ohs over a longer extended period of time. But I think we're going to get there. But before we move on, I would like to present to you or discuss or lay out to you a couple of cornerstones of the conversation that we're currently having and the things that I'm interested in discussing in regards to new technologies like AI and generally speaking human culture. So what is the impact of AI on human culture? I think it's a little bit feedback. It's a feedback. Thank you. In contemporary discourse, the emergence of artificial intelligence methodologies has manifested a transformative influence upon the landscape of creative expression. Over the course of recent years, we have witnessed a speedy integration of these innovative techniques within various artistic realms, encompassing the domains of visual arts, fashion, music, and literature. Of course, architecture is not immune to this pervasive paradigmatic shift. Emerging as a veritable crucible of interdisciplinary collaboration, the intersection of AI and architecture reveals a nuanced network of computational ingenuity and design innovation. It gardens the built environment. Architects find themselves at the vanguard of this rapidly developing juncture, navigating the dynamic interplay between tradition and innovation, intuition and computation. Indeed, the advent of AI ushers a renaissance of sorts within architecture discourse, fostering a dialectical synthesis of human ingenuity and computational prowess. So, does AI affect architecture? This is a diagram that was published by Goldman Sachs in March 2023. It depicts the impact of AI on a variety of different disciplines within the next 10 years. The red one is architecture. 37% of the jobs will be affected, meaning change, not disappear. They will be affected by technology, but not replaced. How do we change the culture of the discipline when it is about this emerging paradigm? In the last couple of years, I've tried with a variety of colleagues to put together symposia, exhibitions, publications, lectures that discuss the emergence of artificial intelligence in design, but also, I would say, generally speaking, the emergence of AI as a cultural signifier of our current time. And it has led to a variety of different conclusions. One of them is, why do we need to demystify artificial intelligence in architecture? What most people see today are just the tip of the iceberg. ChatGPT, Dall-E, Midjourney, M.Arch, Diffusion. Underneath the water surface is an enormous plethora of highly interesting algorithms, concepts of AI that could really change what architecture can do. And it's all supported by what's on the lowest level of it, which is the gigantic data sets. Now let me talk a little bit about diffusion. This, what you see here now, is sort of like the grandfather of what you see today called Midjourney, Dall-E, and so on. This was a project that we did for a high school in Shenzhen in China for about 3,000 students, so it's a huge school, where we used attentional GAN, which is basically designed to prompt the neural network to create images based on natural language. So it's precisely dealing the same way that Midjourney does, or similar. But of course the results were very crude, simple, barely to recognize what it's supposed to be. But it was still useful for us as a driver of the project in order to create differentiated, colorful, fun elements of a school. In early 2022, the term disco diffusion started to pop up in my radar. This animation was among the first things that I created in the winter, and it literally defines the program for me of what diffusion models are capable of doing. Continuous iterations based on a very large data set. The idea of iteratively working through a problem is well known to architects. It is part of their nature. Here's just an example of a series of 28 iterative models for the Saturn Tower in Vienna by the Atelier Hans Hollein from 2004. And if you think further about it, the architect sitting down with a pen and a piece of paper to start sketching plans will also be iteratively going through the problem, trying to solve the problems in the plan. What diffusions models actually do is amplify that notion, is support this idea of variation. So I think this is one of the things why architects feel so attracted to tools like Midjourney. It provides you with variations and you're able to select one and move on. I asked this question many times during the development of the book to people, users of Midjourney or Dall-E or any one of those methods. How long does it take you to select the one image of the four that you like? And the answer is always the same. Between 1 and 2 seconds. So it means that this idea of iteratively selecting what our sensibility will pick is really innate in us architects. This is a piece called the Mosaic. It used 20,264 AI-generated images that form a gradient of color. The reason why it's only 20,000 images, or 20,264 images, is not because we didn't have more. We had many, many, many more. But because of the scale of the artwork. The artwork is 15 feet by 15 feet. And the 20,000 images allowed a resolution that made every single pixel of that image appear the size of your palm. And you were able to recognize every single image that is in that image. So just to show you that idea of variation and the possibility to play with that. But let's go a little bit deeper. How did this whole development start? How did diffusion models actually start? In 2015, there was a specific progress in machine vision. After enough images were labeled, it was possible to create an algorithm that can automatically capture images. Meaning, you showed an algorithm an image, there was enough data there to support that it could create a caption saying people walking on a bridge, for example, like in this case, right? Somebody came up with the idea, what if I turn this process on? Can you do something about the noise? It's really annoying. Is there something we can do? How is this happening? I'd rather speak without the microphone then, but okay. Either way. So people walking on a bridge. So, and somebody came up with the idea, what happens if I turn it around? Instead of making a machine recognize what's in the image, you give it a prompt and it creates an image, right? This is actually a method that is used occasionally in computer science, where a model that is supposed to do analytically, the flow of information is just turned around and becomes generative. So, and the person who came up with this idea was Elon Mandisov and his colleagues at Amazon Web Services. They also right away wrote a paper, which was called Generative Images from Captions with Attention in 2016. So you see the concept of attention that I mentioned already before with attentional GAN is an important aspect of what diffusion models actually do. The funny thing is that these images that were in the paper they presented, and they are here with the captions, with the prompts that were used to generate these images. A stop sign is flying in blue skies. A herd of elephants flying in the blue skies. A toilet sits in the open in the grass field, and so on. If you squint your eyes, you might be able to recognize something in there, but it was barely recognizable what they do. But nonetheless, the concept worked. What diffusion models actually do is they take actually data that is then destructured by adding noise into it. More noise until it is just a random noise image. By the way, generative adversarial networks do also the same thing. Is this working at all? Somehow? I mean, I'd rather prefer not to have the microphone at all. Yes. It's very distracting. I apologize. Sorry for that. You know what? I'm just going to keep going with it. So what basically happens is data is destructured by adding noise iteratively. More and more noise until it becomes a completely random noise image. Then the whole process is reversed and it actually follows the logic of your prompt in organizing the pixel text into your image. So again, data gets decomposed. It's adding noise until it becomes a completely random image. And then using something called a Markov chain and using the prompt as a guideline, this noise is then structured back into data. And you see one of the denoising steps down there. So it's actually using denoising algorithms to do that. In short, you take this, you destructure it, you structure it back, and then you get this. In short. Simple. So how do you use these sort of ideas creatively, like in a way of doing something with it except of just pretty images? These are a bunch of Midjourney images that I created in July 2022 to create the layout of the book that I'm presenting today. It took me about maybe 1 or 2 hours to do these images and define or decide which layout I want to use. Next step, this is actually the mock-up that I made based on those images. It took a couple of weeks to do the InDesign layout for this. So the translation from what I got from Midjourney to what it basically became in the end took a couple of weeks, and then the work on the book itself was about 6 to 7 months or so. So there's still a lot of manual human work involved, even though it's using Midjourney as a starting point. All right, as we're here, we can also go right away and ask, what is the book about? Yeah. So Diffusions in Architecture, a guide to diffusion models and their impact on design, with insight on how this novel artificial intelligence technology may disrupt the industry. Diffusions in Architecture delves into the impact of generative AI models that affect architecture design and aesthetics. The book presents an analysis of how this is revolutionizing architecture and changing the way architects approach their work. The architects presented in the book focus on the application of specific AI techniques and tools used in generative design, such as Diffusions, Dall-E 2, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney. It discusses how these techniques can generate images that are both realistic and imaginative, creating new possibilities for architectural design and aesthetics. 22 leading designers and theorists offer their insights, providing disciplinary depth by covering the full impact of these learning tools on architecture. So I conceptualized the book in complete contrast to how machines would organize stuff, because basically machines don't sort, they search, right? Humans sort. So I created, I would say, boxes where I actually put the variety of different architects in, those being estrangements, vestures, commerances, and suppositions. The first large box I created is the suppositions. Mario Carpo, Bart Lotzmann, Sandra Manninger, Ryan Vincent Manning, and Joy Knobloch all delivered timely, exciting, and provocative texts engaging with the problem at hand. Suppositions are the silent assumptions that live beneath the surface of any hypothesis, theory, or model. They are the enigmatic propositions that guide the trajectories of our conceptual frameworks and provide a foothold for further interrogation. Suppositions are like threads woven into the fabric of theories, often in plain sight, but nonetheless shaping the texture and structure of our intellectual constructs. They are the starting points of our investigations, the launching pads of our journey. In their ambiguity and uncertainty, suppositions are testaments to the elusive nature of knowledge itself. The suppositions in this book are hunches, haruspices, premonitions of a field in motion. Let's continue with the commerances, another one of those boxes that helps humans sort data. I have to thank Corey Beek, Sumin Han, Hanjun Kim, Marco Vanucci, Alicia Ahmed Vasquez for their contributions. I was actually surprised how many architects actually also delivered highly thoughtful, inspiring texts on the topic. In the taxonomy of synthetic imaginations, commerances refer to a collection of architectural entities that can be inhabited. Houses, dwellings, residences, abodes, domiciles, down to temporary shelters. It is an archaic term that allows to stretch and bend the meaning of inhabitation and use it as an elastic envelope for the example seen in this segment of the book. The morphing abilities of the term also allow a translation that means place of residence or simply place. The strange places in this chapter evoke a sense of spatiality, as it would occur in a physical environment. Even if the images are made based on the numerical data present in the RGB values of the pixels. As much as these places are reduced to images at the moment, there is no doubt that this imagery will spill over into our physical reality sooner than later. Yet place never becomes merely parasitic regarding its architectural properties, nor is it just a byproduct of powerful image generators. It retains its own features and fate, its own local being, regardless of being actual or virtual. These are a plethora of thinkers. There is a plethora of thinkers who have found new trajectories for the idea of place. All of these thinkers share the fundamental understanding that place is not a static condition, but rather a dynamic and constantly changing entity. This concept applies to a range of contexts, including the course of history, as noted by Fernand Braudel and Foucault, the natural world, as explored by Wendell Berry and Gary Snyder, the political realm, as discussed by Jean-Luc Nancy and Henry Lefebvre, gender relations and sexual difference, as examined by Luz Hirigami, poetic imagination, as studied by Gaston Bachelard and Rudolf Otto, geographic experience and reality, as analyzed by Michel Foucault, Guy Fu Tuan, and David Simon, and Edward Ralph. The sociology of the polis and the city, as observed by Walter Benjamin, Hannah Arendt, and Louis Mumford. Nomadism, as described by Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. And architecture, as explored by Jacques Derrida, Peter Eisner, and Bernd Schumi. Vestures. In the taxonomy of synthetic imagination, vestures take the position of working through the problem of the envelope, the exterior, the facade, the frontage, of wrapping of object. I would like to thank Daniel Bolochan, Nicolo Casas, Daniel Köhler, Andrew Cutlass, Sina Mostafavi, Asma Mehan, Rasa Navasatite, Igor Pantic, and Dustin White for their contributions. Generally speaking, vestures refers to clothing or attire, especially when it is considered as a symbol of rank or status. Coronation robes, regalia, chasubles, dalmatics, kasayas, and so on. It can also refer to the covering of a particular object or surface, such as a building or a piece of furniture. To this extent, this chapter examines the tendency of diffusion models to lend atmosphere and moods to the imagery as an analogy to layers of fabric, leaning towards the painterly and the cinematic in its appearance, embellishing the vestures of architecture. Vestures in architecture function, semiologically speaking, like a true mythology of architectural design. Because the architecture signified is objectified, thickened, visually materialized, in blobs of pixels that architecture becomes a mythos of language, in the sense of mythos being tied to a traditional or recurrent theme or plot structure. It is akin to the way the vestures in this chapter are generated through the use of recurring language prompts, trying to describe architectural phenomena. So it is in this mythology of architectural design you can hear the echoes of the future. One could also say it's utopia. Architecture, similar to fashion, as for example described by Roland Barthes, serves as a semiotic system through which we communicate with the world around us. The images in this chapter speak to us in a language that is both defamiliarized and particular, expressing the values, desires, and aspirations of sometimes unparticular times and strange places. Simultaneously, the projects are tunneling through the minds of architecture history in the form of gigantic image datasets. By studying this language, we can begin to understand the deeper meanings and implications of the visual structures of these images. Estrangements. The concept of estrangement in architecture exists within the interstice of the recognizable and the defamiliarized, the known and the enigmatic, the ordinary and the evocative. It is a complex and nuanced phenomenon that eludes easy comprehension, necessitating a deep exploration of the language of architecture, its forms, materials, and spaces. I would like to thank Cesare Batelli, Emanuel Coe, Elena Manfredini, Sandra Manninger, Virginia Sanfratello, and Kyle Steinfeld for their contributions. The project in this section live happily in this territory of interrogation. At its core, estrangement serves as a means to challenge assumptions about the world we inhabit. It involves unraveling our perception of architecture, built and unbuilt, pushing beyond the boundaries of our habitual understanding and allowing us to see the world in a new light. This idea is not new and has been explored by philosophers and thinkers throughout history. Hegel's examination of estrangement as a tool of self-reflection, Karl Marx's alienation of the working force, Jacques Lacan's charting of the unsettling territory between the conscious and the unconscious, Theodor Adorno's musings about the contradiction and alienation of modern society. Essential for interrogating the projects presented in this book are the concepts presented by thinkers and artists, such as Sigmund Freud's analysis of the uncanny, Viktor Shklovsky's Ostranenie, and Bertolt Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt. In the realm of visual art, Mario Klingemann, Federica McCormick, a trained architect by the way, and Sofia Crespo, their art offer compelling examples of estrangement. Klingemann's use of machine learning algorithms to create surrealistic images challenges conventional ideas about the role of technology in artistic production. On the other hand, McCormick's and Crespo's AI-generated menageries of strange animals, such as the Neural Zoo series, present an otherworldly aesthetic that defies easy classification. However, estrangement is not limited to artistic expression. It can also serve as a powerful force for social and political change, by challenging our presumptions about the world and inspiring us to imagine new possibilities, as for example described by Katja Hogenbohm. In this sense, it is a tool for subversion, a means of disrupting dominant narratives that shape our lives and opening up new spaces for creativity and innovation. Epilogue. There are probably a million ways to end this book, but let me end with a little story. Walter Gropius of Bauer's Fate could not sketch at all, not a bit. At the start of his career, working in Per de Beren's office, Gropius kept this handicap a secret. Despite this setback, Gropius persevered in the Beren's office and eventually became known for his ability to dictate drawings to his collaborators, proving the power of language to convey the intricate material and spatial relationships in architectural projects. This notion of description was further expanded upon by Sol LeWitt, who dedicated his entire career to the potency of language in the forms of instructions, presaging the emergence of programming and scripting as a means of artistic and architectural expression. The synergy between language and architecture is complex and multifaceted, yet it is clear that language has the ability to convey abstract concepts, facilitate collaboration, offering a powerful tool in the design process. To this end, this book attempted to shed light on the murky shadows of diffusion models by exploring their relationship to language and the architectural imagination. It seems unmistakable to contemplate on the ways in which language, prompting, and the theoretical perceptions of thinkers like Wittgenstein, Shklovsky, and Michel Foucault have fashioned our view upon technologies, aiding in the imaginative process. Throughout the course of this book, we have also examined the notions of commorances, vestures, and other stuff, underscoring the vital relationship between the built environment and the individuals who inhabit it, by utilizing diffusion models to comprehend and analyze how people interact with their surroundings. Designers can conceive more human-focused designs that enhance the lives of those who inhabit them. One of the key concepts we have explored is the idea of estrangement, or defamiliarization, a technique used by Viktor Shklovsky to make the familiar seem strange in order to prompt new ways of seeing and thinking. Looking towards the future, it is clear that artificial intelligence will continue to play an increasingly important role in the field of architecture design. As AI models become more advanced and sophisticated, designers will have access to an unprecedented level of information, enabling them to create buildings, neighborhoods, and cities that are more responsive to the needs and desires of their users. However, while AI can offer valuable insights, it is ultimately up to the designer to make the final decisions and bring their visions to life. By combining the power of AI models with human creativity and intuition, we can create a future of architecture that is both technologically advanced and deeply human-centered. Thank you.
Just now got this result, so it might be a little bit.
Okay, good.
Great time. If you're willing to still take a few questions, I'd really appreciate that. Would anybody like to open up the conversation and ask anything? Well, as people are thinking of some things, I'm curious about how, you mentioned to me just now as we were wrapping up as kind of a full disclosure that in some ways this is a kind of snapshot in time because it was already a couple years in the making. Obviously, with the publication, that's how these things go. And I am curious if you're starting to see that there's other kind of forms, iterations, obviously as a kind of appendix to this, and where you see new generations evolving.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's a great question, actually. Just to give you the background that we were discussing, I started working on the book in summer 22, when the first wave of Midjourney became popular, right? And it was very clear that it's going to continue to be popular, so I thought we have to somehow capture that moment when this thing exploded. It took then another 6-7 months to make the book, get all the people together, collect the material, editing, etc., etc. And then it took another half year to be published and really get out to the open field. Because the development of these diffusion ones was so fast in the time, the moment the book was available, I was like, oh, then those images probably didn't age well. Yeah? The funny thing is though, that it has become really a snapshot of that moment in time when this whole thing exploded. Yeah? And you notice this also in the enthusiasm and depth of the text that other people provided. No matter if it's theorists or architects, designers, everyone was trying to understand what does it mean now that we can do that? Yeah? What does it mean for image creation, design elements? Can I start now using Midjourney to create plans and sections? Well, you kind of could, and you kind of still can. The only thing is that they never make sense. Because what we also learned over time is that for machines to comprehend anything, apart from the fact that machines don't understand anything, just a priori, yeah? They can recognize features, that's what they do. So, in order to learn, for example, what is a classroom, a toilet, a living room, and so on, a corridor, manual labor, human labor is necessary, meaning labeling. Then those things would become better. But to your question, coming back to your question, I think that what has changed in the meantime is that these diffusion models are getting so good, yeah, that this element of estrangement that I presented in the lecture is getting lost. This moment where things emerge out of the data sets and the latent space that are surprising and different to you and weird sometimes, yeah, but in a way that provokes you as a designer to think about your own project differently. Those things are getting rarer. So the training of Midjourney, the leveling, the weights in Midjourney, and other diffusion models have been optimized now to provide almost perfect photorealistic imagery, which is boring. Boring. I call these models vanilla models. Yeah? These are yes, they can do images and they're gonna look great, but they're gonna leave very little room for you as a human to interpret and say I have no idea what he meant with that, but I could use it for that. That's an incredibly interesting human quality. We still have the ability to see in mistakes, in errors, something that could provoke us to do something interesting, different, and new. This is something machines still cannot do. Yeah? Sandra's always saying, just wait another 2 years. She might be right, by the way. Yeah? But at least for now, this ability for misreading is extremely important for a creative process. We all know that. Yeah? And now that AI is giving us less and less space for misreading what it's producing, those moments are becoming more rare. I can tell you that from a lot of the artists I mentioned today that are AI artists, most of them are going back to using older models because they thought that they're more interesting, they're giving me things that are provocative. The new ones just like boring. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it just seems like, you can hear me. I think that there's a lot of terminology out there, and there's a lot of ways of conceptually kind of coming at this software and these different programs. And I think it's maybe a challenge to like try to decipher what's working for what purpose. And I just, there's certain things that are, starting to emerge just in the last year, or last few months. I'm curious if there's anything that's already making some of this obsolete in a way. I was more about a curiosity.
I think like one major thing that we have to think about that iceberg that I showed. The iceberg where you have like these 4 or 5 diffusion models on top, and then there's like a ton of algorithms underneath there, which almost no architect is touching, yeah, because they mean work. We have to read the data sets, we have to code things, we have to change the code and so on. But that's the gold mine for architectural production, not those image generators on top. And I think this discussion has to change. And it's slowly changing. Thank you very much for putting together this panel tomorrow. This is very important exactly for that. Yeah? That people start to understand after that first fascination and like, wow, look at that image generator did like this amazing image. Now you have to start to like be a little bit more like, what's behind that? What's deeper in the system that I can use for architectural production? How do I actually leverage the abilities of AI for prediction and optimization in a way that can deal with other aspects of design rather than only putting pieces together to make a nice image? So how do I optimize? Like one of the projects we're working on in the lab in Michigan is we actually labeled over 2,000 apartment plans from all around the world. So we made this global collection of data. In difference to what a lot of social media companies do, we pay people to label stuff. Yeah? Well, they do too, but that's a different story. Now that we have all these plans, the goal is to create an AI application that allows to optimize social housing. Yeah? And this is going to be available for free for every architect around the world. Our hope is that by using these kind of tool sets, they can provide better service for their communities faster, maybe even cheaper, but increase the quality of living for these people. Right? So these are things that AI can do, which there's not a lot of discussion about that. Yeah? But these are like game changers. The images are nice, but these are game changers. And you can do the same thing with structures, with optimization of circulation. There's like every single architectural problem can be actually applied to an algorithm.
Thank you, Matias. Just continuing or picking up on this conversation, I think that maybe related to this problem of optimization and interpretation, right? Like, I think for some problems, for some architectural problems, you could argue that these models work great, right, as optimization tools, right, like circulation or code or whatever. But isn't that like counter to this other idea, right, of maybe the less optimized or the one that leaves the more open end is the one that is more useful for creative people, to leave some space for interpretation. I think that's maybe a point I would like to hear you reflect on. Thank you.
That is a great question. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your question. And like, I have to say 2 things about this. Number one, those terms like optimization and prediction are currently experiencing a semantic shift in their meaning. So until very recently, there was like this 20th century thinking of what optimization is. Like the German optimize a steel construction idea, right? It's numbers, period, that's it. Yeah? Prediction is a far more nuanced problem, right? Because prediction means it's things we don't know about, right? They are predicted now into a specific moment in time that does not exist yet, right? The optimization, for example, if you think about Midjourney, yeah, the images are not optimizing towards functionality, right? They're not optimizing towards being realistically and standing correctly or having the right circulation. Nothing of that. It just pretends to do the things. It's an imitation machine. But what it optimizes is towards the goal to come as close as possible to your prompt, right? So it's not optimizing towards functionality. It's optimizing towards aesthetical desires, which is kind of really weird, yeah? But this means optimization changes in the sense that it's not being functional or practical or rational. It's irrational. It's irrational optimization, yeah? Which is kind of interesting. It's kind of a really weird concept. Then you have to differentiate. So if we think that these two terms are basically changing, the other thing is the problem of the wicked and the tame problem, right? This is a very known problem in engineering. Tame problems, they're measurable. You can make your calculations and you're done. Wicked problems are really hard to measure because it's sensibility, aesthetics, atmosphere, like the things that are about beauty, for example. Well, beauty is to a certain extent measurable. The funny thing is, I had recently a conversation with one of the AI artists I mentioned, and he said to me that one of the most interesting things about AI is that it has made things measurable that were not measurable before. Yeah? Emotion, for example. Yeah? So suddenly we are now in a realm that we humans have never experienced before, which is this barrier between the rational, practical, tame problem and the ideas on aesthetics, beauty, sensibility, things that are not optimized, as you said yourself, which I agree with, by the way, because in my opinion, the most optimized architecture is most of the time the most boring one. Yeah? So I agree with you on that. But this whole system of concepts that we're so sure about in architecture, they're starting to soften. Yeah? That's, I think, where the power of these models and ideas is. And the earlier we accept that, and then also the earlier we accept that we as humans are not unique in doing those things, in thinking or in intelligence, the earlier I think we're going to understand how to leverage the possibilities of this new technology in a positive way.
Hello. I don't know if it would be like a question or critique, but like right now the way like AI is kind of going, it's just a lot about like, the visual and maybe not enough about like the fabrication of things. Like it seems that AI is geared towards designing and being creative, but like what if an architect were to instead think of how to incorporate like the robotics aspect of it, because like I want the AI to do my laundry and do my dishes while I do the designing versus the other way around. Like I still have to go home and do the dishes, make my bed, things like that. So I'm thinking like, is there maybe a more useful way that an architect can start to design the world with like the machine inhabiting our space instead?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I have to say that what you're saying, that like the vast majority of the things AI does is in terms of creativity, I completely disagree with that. That's just the most visible part. Yeah. So of course, if it's in the newspapers, if it's in on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you can see that it's creating paintings or images or poetry and like all the sort of things that should be creative. Shouldn't we humans do that? In fact, behind those layers, this is a very thin layer of things that AI is doing. Underneath there's a massive amount of AIs you don't even notice are doing things for you. Yeah? Checking the traffic, controlling the way your mail is going, filtering your email, and so like all the things, facial recognition, which is in itself a big problem, by the way, but nonetheless, so there's like this enormous system of like machine learning aspects, AI and so on, that is already around you doing this. Okay, that's one thing. The other one about robots, which is a great question. People are working on it. It's just not so visible. Yeah. For example, one of the things we're also doing in the lab is that I like this research a lot. It's a research that actually uses machine vision, meaning teaching a machine to recognize things, yeah, to train a robot to sort rubble from demolition sites. Yeah? Because this is a big problem we have right now. We're creating so much CO2 in architecture only by throwing away, well, like the demolition debris. But if we have a machine that is able to differentiate between glass, steel, bricks, concrete, and so on, and can separate those immediately on the side of demolition so that it can be recycled much easier again, that's a great contributor to architecture to make things easier. And it's not people sorting that, it's machines sorting that. And that's what it should be. I don't want people sorting bricks and steel and broken glass and stuff like that. I want the machine to do that, right? So, and then on the other side, there are also things happening right now that facilitate your process of design. Like, for example, it's like low-hanging fruit that we can automatize, for example, to check whether your plans are up to code. Yeah? Instead of you having to sit there for 2-3 days trying to figure out if your plan is really up to code. That saves like 3 days you can use for design. It's your choice at the end whether you use a machine for designing or not. I use it because I think I benefit from it. But if you don't think you benefit from it, don't use it.
It's helpful, we need it for the video.
Oh yes. So, so there are two lecturers talking about architectural intelligence and its impact on architecture. This term, which is rare, and one is horrific in the end of February, and then it's you. I want to ask you the same question. So during your design process, you are using the randomness, the generative impact, the generative logic of AI on like designing like important like design and constructing further projects. But that is the thing I want to ask. In architecture design nowadays, there are just mainly two parts: design and all the other stuff. The coding. The other stuff means the coding, the structures, the scale, and maybe the materials. The application of AI nowadays is usually on the design part, but that is the thing that like the human brain wants to take part in. What the human brain, at least for myself as an undergraduate student, does not actually want to take part in is the application of like all the other stuff rather than design. So, and that leads to my question is like nowadays, I have read like a lot of different articles about AI, and they are lacked in precision, they are lacked in scale. It's generated logic nowadays cannot decide whether what architecture is. It's truly like all other arts, but those art does not have a man, it have a people inside it. It's in lack of scale. It's in lack of all the metric systems and all the other elements that makes a house. So. This is a Rubicon Lever. When can the architectural intelligence get through it?
Thank you, thanks a lot. You're an undergraduate, right?
What?
Undergraduate.
Yes. Yeah.
I can promise you, when you graduate, that's gonna work. Right now, we're just in the development phase. Yeah, we are really early still in doing this. Like this, we just had like one wave of people getting fascinated with image generators. But imagine next year somebody really figuring out how he can use, you have your Google Colab with a nice code in there that basically combines a variety of different things, like 3D models with like structural properties, the material properties, the visual properties. So you can, it's called concatenating. You concatenate a variety of different aspects that you need for the design into a larger system. Yeah, that's sort of like the grail at the moment in AI research. Like how do you concatenate all the things so that at the end they understand each other and inform each other in a way that produces a positive result? Does that make sense?
Yes, appreciate it.
Apart from the fact that we still haven't solved how to use 3D models properly with any form of neural network. That's still a problem.
Yeah, it's not really a question, but a comment. Like, as we were talking about, there's all these these programs that are in their infancy, really, and I know that it's you've been dealing with AI for a long time, but in terms of what has been accessible lately, it's just beginning, and I think that there's a patience that one has to also have, because when I think back to 2000, 2001, you know, maybe a little earlier, 1999, all the programs were quite crude as well. And then the kind of materialization, if we're trying to get to that point, or how does it influence that, it always, you know, is always everybody just trying to kind of test the abilities for that translation to you know, work for them. And that's where we're at right now. And I think that that's important to be able to have that patience that, yeah, it's going to maybe take a little time, but like, it's okay.
No, you're totally right. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why it's going to take a little bit longer, which people don't really talk about much. Like, for example, despite the fact that architecture basically has a history of over 2,000 years, we are a so-called data-poor discipline. Yeah? We're just not, we're really late in the game of creating data sets for our own purposes. Like proper architecture data sets. Like, there's a ton of, you can get airplanes, or you can get chair data sets. That's why you see like architects saying like, ooh, I solved the problem with doing a 3D model data set, and it produces chairs. Why does it produce chairs? Because that's the data set that is out there for free. You don't find one of houses that is well done, or facades, or stairs, or like all those things don't exist. Yeah. The numbers are out there, but we have to organize, put them together, or find some machine learning process that can actually structure unstructured data. It's our biggest problem. So these are like sorry to nerd out a little bit here, but these are things that are necessary to get those things to work, because otherwise we can say like, oh, great, AI, fantastic. Without the data properly done, we cannot do anything. But I have to say the accessibility has become so much better. Like, I mean, things like GitHub and Google Colab, cloud computing solutions, all those things didn't exist like 10 years ago, yeah? And that alone has made it so much easier for every student to go in and play around with the code, break it if you want, yeah? But like do stuff in it without having to buy like an expensive software or a super expensive computer. It's $30 a month or something. Yeah, you can afford it for a couple of months, play around. If it's for you, stick with it.
Last one?
Thank you for the presentation. You know, just going back perhaps to the issue of the aesthetics that we've talked about, that right now really remains in the realm of the image. And quite often I'm kind of thinking back also to this time, the end of the 20th century, and the way technology, I think at the end really did change the aesthetics of architecture, because there was a kind of direct way to go from computer models more directly to form and through digital fabrication. So I think that had a huge kind of impact on the way we think about the possibility of form in the built environment. And I just wonder in what way AI, do you see this going a kind of, you know, you saw the kind of paper work in the
Yes.
model room here, right? And it was an aim to just test it out. I mean, like, okay, and use AI to generate ideas, and then where does this path lead us? And at the end it led us to the laser
Paper architecture.
or it led us to paper architecture, perhaps even better. And so, yeah, I wonder, do you see the power of it ultimately being in this bottom part of the iceberg that's perhaps more dark, more scary, more... I mean, when I hear you talking about the housing floor plans, I get both really excited and really scared simultaneously. Because I might trust you, I don't know if I trust Gensler with that exercise, right? I don't know, perhaps... nothing against Gensler, but like, you know, a larger corporation, let's put it like that. And so, where do you see the larger impact coming, and do you really think it has truly an impact on the aesthetic agenda of architecture, the formal agenda of architecture? Or do you think actually this will kind of dissipate a little bit more? And yes, Midjourney will help us with these things, but it will not have a similar kind of impact on the way we build as the kind of last digital revolution or digital change.
That is a great question. Like number one, you got me an idea, which I have to remember when I'm back in the lab, which we have to put into the algorithm of plan generators a punishment routine. That if you use it badly, it destroys itself. The question here is, of course, who defines what is bad? That's a little bit more, because it would like be a moral decision from my side. Not sure if I should do that. The other one, I definitely think that it's going to change aesthetics. Yeah, I think it's already doing that. I mean, you see that in like people who are really doing interesting things with this technology are changing the aesthetics. And you see that. You see that. I see this every day, like things that are like, wow, this is so different, so weird. I like weird stuff. Now, you know, but what I mean with that is there's a big gap between people who are using this technology really in a creative way to expand the vocabulary of aesthetics in architecture. And these people are out there. But for every one of those, there's 100,000 others doing crappy Zaha Hadid copies on Midjourney, which no one wants to see. Yeah? I think this is just abuse. Yeah? So, and this is exactly what's happening right now. There's a divide going on. And I'm working for the good guys, at least I'm hoping. I hope so. The book is exactly an attempt to do that. Like collect these people who are really intellectually invested in trying to understand how it changes our idea of architecture. Not necessarily only the aesthetics, the idea of architecture. And other ideas too. Saying goodbye to human uniqueness, for example. Saying goodbye to the star architect who's been useless since the end of the 20th century anyways. Yeah? So why should we still continue thinking about these overcome concepts if we have like suddenly an entity, a machine? I'm not going to call it intelligent. It's not intelligent, by the way. Yeah? This is a myth. Yeah? But a machine that can interrogate the entirety of human aesthetics, history, and like everything, basically said, and it creates that within something called a latent space, which has corners that are dark corners with wonderful architectural ideas that we just need to mine and find. It's a space of discovery. Within that space of discovery, if you learn how to navigate it, if you learn how to put the light on that corner that has like this incredibly wonderful architectural concept, we can find amazing things. So for me, the work with AI is not so much a criticism of things that happen, it's like an enormous expansion of our possibilities as designers. And in doing so, yes, it will change aesthetics. And it's already doing, as I said. I don't know if this was an answer or just a rant, but either way.
No, I mean, it's more like an open question out of the experience. Where do you think it's all? You know, the paper is strange. It's probably different.
Paper is strange, yeah.
Can I take your last question?
Yeah, well, thank you for your presentation. And this spring semester, we proceed the AI workshop with the professor of Texas University. And his one of the goal is to convert AI, image AI research into a physical model or physical something in reality. So I think that is very important to use the purpose to use AI tools. So do you think is that important to convert AI image, AI result into physical something in reality?
You mean taking what we produce with AI and then making something physical out of it?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you saw the last video that I showed. That was not a Midjourney video, that was real. It was real people around. And yes, I think it's important to translate that into physical reality. Yeah, it just gives it a really important immediateness. It becomes an object that is tangible, physical, has weight. I have right now a thesis group that are creating a model, a huge model, out of concrete, and it's massive. I mean, the thing is going to weigh maybe like a ton or something. But it was important to them that it has that weight, that it has that mass, that it becomes physical and real and tangible, and that you have the feeling if it falls on your foot is gone. Yeah? So this physicality, this corporeality of the experience of architecture, even if it's just a model, yeah? But there is this mass and weight and like the dark concrete, you feel the temperature of the concrete and so on. So yes, I think it's important to translate those things into physical reality, because only then I think it has that impact on you as an observer. If they scale up that project and becomes a room, yeah, and you suddenly experience the emotional response that an AI-generated object can create, that's exciting. Yeah? Because at the end of the day, I think good architecture should evoke an emotional response in you, like good art. Good art evokes emotional responses. Yeah? And I think good architecture does that too. Yeah? And if I can actually combine my human ingenuity with something that AI can help me with to create this space that I want to achieve, that's cool. That's great. So yes, we should build it. Absolutely.